Stellaris, the game that has genocide mechanics but is still deemed appropriate for most kids. While many people will play this game to cause galactic chaos, today I dare to ask the question, what if Lizino is not la bad? Because it turns out that having a lot of aliens around the galaxy is very profitable. That is why today I am going to be the megacorporation known as P-Corp. We were a colony that got cut off from our home planet, creating some very tough times for the peacocks on Rix. But you know what they say about tough times? Tough times create strong birds, and strong birds create fat stacks. Thus, P-Corp was born. Now, there is a big galaxy out there with hundreds of stars to explore and millions of credits to be made, so I gotta get to work. Investigating a nearby system, we find the remains of a civilization called Karcharion, who had abducted peacocks long ago for some sort of unknown experiment. I of course had to look into this because ancient civilization means ancient treasure, so our explorers were on the hunt. I discovered an operational ship, and to get its secrets we had to send our finest birds to approach it and reveal its secrets. With the clues we got from this ship and other sites, we found what is likely to be their home system. As we went over to survey, another explorer found the remains of a ship that apparently belonged to a species that went around the galaxy, tasting different life forms. We didn't taste good to them, but apparently the Istrans were their favorite, and we established contact with the galaxy's most delicious species. Makes me wonder if that was a Karcharion ship and that's the experiment they were doing with us. Cause kinda hurts that we weren't abducted by scientists for something cool like a medical experiment, but instead alien Gordon Ramsay deciding if we would taste better fried or baked. Our scientists arrived in the Karcharion home system and found nothing but ruins, so we have to find out what happened. But a bunch of ships rush in like a salty Gmod admin to get rid of us from this system. We run into some other entrepreneurial aliens running a casino, and of course, I gotta try my luck here on the slots. But you know what they say? 95% of gamblers quit before they hit it big. We also discovered a robot admiral from some long dead race, and there should probably be some concerns about letting someone like this run our military, but I'm just gonna ignore that. Although, can you imagine spending your life studying to be an admiral and your job just gets taken by this? I'm creating a villain origin story here. The closest empire we run into is a machine empire called the Transaru Interface, and while they are pretty chill with us, machines are not very good clients. I continue building up the company and search for decent clients, but instead I get a very concerning pop-up about a great Khan rising up and aiming to take over the galaxy. This would not be good for shareholders. I needed to transition the economy to something that could support a war and build defenses to guard our space. The Yasavlin raiders weren't wasting any time to expand. The poor Istran United Territories were already getting torn apart, and the Zanbor system was going to be the place where I would make my stand against the raiders, since the environmental hazards here would make it easier to hit and destroy enemy ships. I just have to hope that I have enough time to set my defenses. My tech wasn't good, but I gotta work with what I got to make a stand, cause I don't want to end up like the Istran, who have now been completely wiped out. My life wasn't gonna get any easier when all of a sudden I got a random power outage in my home system. The cause of this power outage was a monster called the Kaleidoscope, who demanded us to feed it energy. But P-Corp doesn't believe in handouts, so we're just gonna let it starve. We'll settle this the corporate way, which is to ignore it until it starts causing problems for management, then we make it someone else's problem. Later on, we encountered the reason why our colony was lost, the Greater Peacock Union. They wanted to assimilate everyone and turn them into cyborgs, which is awful because for all one consciousness, then there's no need for a currency, and how are we supposed to make money off of other birds? At least they're closer to the raiders than I am, so it looks like they're in for a bad time. It's pretty funny seeing them conquer their territory, but then I see that they're also getting really close to me. The first raider approaches, and I have to hope my base holds long enough for my fleet to relieve it, but things were not going as planned. My fleet did arrive to kill the remaining enemy ships, but it was a hollow victory. I lost my best defensive point, and I didn't have the time to rebuild it. And the most humiliating part of it was that wasn't even a proper fleet. It was their vanguard. So when I see a proper fleet of raiders, it's curtains for me. I eventually got the strength to be able to hold against a good fleet, but then I got the news a second Khan fleet arrived to invade us. There really was nothing I could do, and I had to make sure the company went on, so I surrendered. We would have to give up a lot in the name of survival, but it was good breathing room for me to rebuild and when the time was right, rebel against these savages. But fortunately, that problem ended up taking care of itself because some unknown heroes took care of the Khan problem. And with his death, we were free from being a satrapy and could carry on business as usual. Now I could finally take care of that Karcharian fleet and learn more about them. We see the results of battles that happened eons ago and get a final location that contains the colony. We investigated that colony and actually found a surviving Karcharian. He seemed pretty sad about being the last of his kind, but who cares? We get a shiny new battleship. Finally, we get the event to form the Galactic community, meaning it's time to get spammed by diplomatic notifications and bogged down by dumb regulations for the rest of the game. But at least we can finally get back into contact with our peacock brethren and learn more about what other species have been doing in the galaxy. When the Galactic Marketplace was proposed, I had to make sure Rix was top of the queue. I mean, with 561 trade value, it was the obvious choice. I found a wormhole that took me to the other side of the galaxy to a part that seemed pretty empty, but it turned out it wasn't empty. There were other aliens around here, they just didn't want to be talked to. Despite losing our science ship, we do find out who did this, and unsurprisingly, those aliens were very unfriendly. And the L's don't stop. Somehow, the Peacock Trade Federation got the Galactic Marketplace despite having half the trade value in their system as my capital, so I really don't get how this is determined. And I can't even claim racism because they're also peacocks. I was feeling confident in my economy. I mean, in the time since the fall of the Khan, P Corp had scaled up massively economically, but I check out the Neo-Orc Empire and they just completely outclassed me in every way, but fortunately saw me as something to be protected instead of killed. So I joined their federation, and with these powerful allies, I saw an opportunity. I wanted to declare war on the Kazam Punishers to contain their genocidal ambitions. P Corp couldn't tolerate genocide in this galaxy because they'd be killing potential customers, and while there is a lot we can stand in this galaxy, cutting into our bottom line wasn't one of them. I thought my fleet strength was in a good place since the war declaration screen rated them as inferior, but then I realized that was weighting our entire alliance against them when they showed up with a 68,000 power fleet to greet me. They wasted no time in retaking the system and used the wormhole to get to my space. Despite them not even having an admiral to lead their ships against me, I barely won. I'd soon find out why they're called the Kazam Punishers, because in response to my victory, they summoned a 100,000 power fleet from another dimension to sweep me away. The free market is capable of producing many things to meet demands, but god-killing weapons wasn't a demand until 15 seconds ago. I just begged for a status quo peace at this point, and the Kazam did accept it after they destroyed my fleet. So things are kinda bad for me at this moment, but it's gonna get a lot worse. The Kelix Shard, a xenophobic fallen empire, decides to wake up because there are just too many aliens around. Also, there are reports of subspace echoes rapidly approaching our galaxy, so that means we're gonna have a bug problem soon. But there is a silver lining. We open the L gates to find the star cluster just outside our galaxy and find a civilization that's actually pretty chill. They even give us this cool relic as a thank you gift. I'm gonna need it because the Scourge arrives soon, speaking some unintelligible babble that certainly doesn't sound friendly. We got ourselves a galaxy-wide invasion to defend against, and one thing is for certain, this will not be good for the economy. But fortunately, I'm on the other side of the galaxy, so I have time to prepare my fleet for first contact. The Scourge is sweeping through the Outer Rim, and many life forms are fleeing to us, giving P-Corp more employees and customers, but I can't think short term here. I need to fight those things. I got a solid 100k worth of fleet power versus their 500,000. So instead of fighting their fleet, I just tried to slow them down by attacking their stations, and they made sure to stop that really fast. I brought my ships home and refit those fleets specifically to counter the Scourge by arming them with lasers and equipping them with heavy armor. But while they were refitting, the Galactic Shard, while seeing the Scourge close in on their borders, wiping out all life forms in their way, decided to take action by declaring war on my Federation. Like, I know they don't like us, but I wasn't expecting this as their help. So now we're at war with two genocidal civilizations, but I already designed my fleet to fight the Scourge, so I'm going for them first. I gathered everything in the comm system to stop them from further advancing in my ally, the Great Vigarian Combine, and waited for the Scourge to approach. And despite them having way more fleet power than us, the fact that I made ships specifically to fight them means that they had to retreat. But I did take a lot more damage than I wanted to, forcing me to spend more time repairing and rearming rather than liberating systems. The Galactic Shard's masterful gambit is paying off with them now actively losing systems to the Scourge, since their fleets are committing to fighting us. Like, what level of hatred did they have to be sending ships to harass my star fortress instead of stopping the species trying to genocide them? The Galactic Council forms, and while I understand two of these picks, one of them just doesn't make sense. Yes, I really care and can be trusted to manage the affairs of nations across the galaxy, says civilization bent on wiping them all out. Eventually, the Federation has a vote to peace out the Shard, and I'm just glad we can all focus on fighting the real enemy here. Although my fleets can punch well above its weight against the Scourge, I can only do so much. Right now, I'm just trying to stop the Scourge moving southwards in the Outer Ring, and while I'm doing a good job at that, I realize I can make improvements. I have edicts that I can use to buff my weapons, and I slightly changed my battleship design to include point defense to stop Scourge strikecraft and missiles. Galactic Shard is struggling to fight the Scourge, but they are still a necessary distraction for me while I actually win battles, and since the damage is so minimal against my fleets now, I can be much more aggressive. But there were so many bugs out there, I had to be careful because they could easily overwhelm me. Once I regained my strength, I went on a dash through the Outer Ring to liberate as much Scourge held space as possible. And I was getting the feeling at this point that the Scourge had peaked in strength, because their best response to that was 3 understrength fleets that could barely make a dent in my fleet strength. And they were definitely mad about this battle because they doubled down and sent a proper fleet with some backup, and to give them credit, it was a lot closer of a fight, but we still won. After this, the Scourge was pretty much neutered, and I'm just playing whack-a-bug now, finding any buildups of Scourge fleets and destroying them. I even find a queen and domesticate it, and I know I'm gonna make a killing selling merch based off of this. But I hate that while the galaxy is wrapping up this crisis, there is majority support for a resolution to make war without mercenaries illegal and reduce our naval capacity. The fact that this had to be proposed during the time the Scourge was at its peak is what makes this more mind-boggling. Still, we're just mopping up the last remains of Scourge space, and I think they're out of fleets until I see this system having a casual 500,000 fleet power. I got destroyed so fast, it felt like this. This random event popped up, and honestly, I just skimmed it and picked the option because it was all caps. I never considered the possible consequences of releasing an eldritch horror in a star system, but even though it destroyed that planet, killing thousands, I like to think about the money people would pay to see this thing if we were chill with it. So I decided we could forgive and forget. The Scourge made their final offensive from their last system with a whopping million fleet power from their combined ships, but that offensive went nowhere for them, with me and the Killik Shard working together to shut them down for good. I just realized this final battle was me working with a genocidal empire to beat another genocidal empire. The Killik Shard's relationship with the Scourge is basically like, this galaxy isn't yours to conquer. Now, I just gotta wait while the AI bombards all the Scourge worlds, and there are so many ships doing it, it kills my game just to look in the system. It takes a while, but eventually it's all done and the Scourge is gone for good. Now, I can't just ignore how the Killik Shard has taken advantage of the aftermath of this crisis by expanding into all that newly freed up space. And they also border me, which is pretty uncomfortable, so I want to pivot into declaring a war against them. And unfortunately I'm delayed because the Federation changed the rules so only the President can declare wars, so I had to change other rules to get around it by getting rid of equal votes for law so I had more influence, and changing it so war declaration could be done with a majority vote. The vote goes through and the war begins. I'm immediately told that I'm violating galactic law by not hiring any mercenaries, but now I'm even angrier at this law because how did this pass when there are only 2 mercenary companies in the entire galaxy? And of course the one I created couldn't do anything for me, so I'm just gonna ignore galactic law. I had refitted my battleships to a balanced kinetic and energy damage loadout and moved in unopposed, but the Shard was quick to respond and remind me that they are a much different enemy than the Scourge. They took one of my biggest shipyards in Yunduk, but fortunately the fortresses on the planets prevented them from going any deeper. I counterattacked the small garrison they left behind to guard the system and got to the drawing boards to design a new battleship to fight the Shard. It was gonna take way too long to upgrade everything to these designs because our war exhaustion was going up way faster than I expected. So I upgraded about half the ships and I pushed forward to clear the Shard influence away from us, and later attack their core territory. I can see that we're clearly outmatched here, but I want to see if I can at least beat one of their fleets. And since we hit 100 war exhaustion, one battle is all I have time for. I used the jump drive to get right next to their territory, and while they were recovering, the Killik immediately responded with a 429,000 power fleet. I only have 300,000 fleet power, so I can't say I have high hopes, but it turns out my design was pretty fire because we just stomped them with minimal losses. Now unfortunately I don't have time to do anything else, and we had to settle for a status quo piece, but I did at least show that the Shard can be beaten, and I cleared them away from my space, so I call this a win. I'm gonna end this campaign here cause I've done what I wanted to do and the game is also running so slow. I really should have curbed pop growth more. But this whole game, despite never being the strongest empire, I have punched well above my weight several times and built a very strong civilization here. The tall playstyle honestly ain't too bad in this game, and I hope you guys enjoyed watching. And remember to give the video a like if you enjoyed, and big thanks to my alumni on Patreon for generously funding my space capitalist fantasies. Check it out if you want to go the extra mile and support great content like this. More content will come soon, and I hope to see you guys again.